Sravana today. We're very excited about Bhagavata. We have a special Bhagavata for actually 3 reasons. The first reason is that Prabhupada said every day is a festival in Bhakti Yoga. So today is special just because it's today. And number 2, because we actually want to welcome, we have some participants here from our Foundations of Bhakti retreat. So we want to welcome Katie and Ricardo and Ashley and Andrea. So everyone give them a big round of applause and thank them for being here today for our program. And also everyone else who's here, thank you so much for being here today. What's your name? You, yes.
Cora.
Cora? Thank you for being here, and Cora. She should get a round of applause also. And we also, it's also a special day because we have 2 special people who are together giving the class, Dayal, Gauranga, and Nitai. So let's give them a round of applause. So, actually, Nitai Guru is going to introduce Dayal, and then I'm going to introduce Nitai.
Can you introduce me first?
Yeah, that's...
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, right. Perfect. So, Nitai Prabhu, he's amazing, and
It's supposed to be a short introduction, right?
yeah, I could listen to that. So, but briefly, I will make that as short as possible. So, he is a student of Radhanath Swami. Radhanath Swami is his guru, and he has actually been practicing it since 1998. He's been practicing, and he has a professional background of consultancy. He spent 10 years in the Brahmacharya ashram before he married his wonderful wife, Bhagavata Devi. He also deserves a big round of applause because she's also amazing. And he served as the temple president of ISKCON London for 14 years, also the zonal supervisor for London. And he established the devotee care office in the UK, and him and his wonderful wife have recently moved here to New York to establish the devotee care office for New York City and Bhakti Center specifically. And they are running the wonderful community care team, which Dinabandhu Prabhu is also on. Thank you so much.
You make it a little longer,
Told me to make it short. Okay. Yes.
We're on.
Almost on. We're in. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. So I begged, pleaded, so to get the opportunity to introduce this wonderful person sitting next to me.
He bribed me.
I bribed her. It's only a small bribe. So I just wanted to take this opportunity really to say a few words about Gauranga, who I don't know his educational history, where he worked for so many years before he came here to New York or any of that stuff. But what I do know is that many years ago when I started to visit New York, I'm originally from the States but resided in London for many years. And when I would visit the States and pass through New York, in the very early days of the Bhakti Center, Gauranga was there. Living in the Brahmacharya ashram as a monk. We were both monks in those days. Wore orange robes and completely dedicated. Now we're both.
There were places that monks would just get together and hang out and meet other monks, you know? They closed during COVID, but
Starbucks.
Starbucks, yeah.
And so, and I just wanted to say that, Dayal has been here really since the inception of the Bhakti Center and has always been taking responsibility and looking after so many different things, showing so much love and care to so many people, and especially to my wife and I, since we've shifted here at the beginning of the year. He's taken so much time out, and it's so personal, so loving, so caring, and it's really made a profound difference for us to be able to come and have someone here who's checking in on us, because we need a lot of checking in on. We're old people now, so and also now he's focusing in life in general, trying to hold the space for his own development and for helping the development of others in so many different ways spiritually, and he's doing kirtans in so many wonderful places, giving classes, teaching online, doing so many amazing things. So I just really wanted to take this opportunity to thank him very much for his kindness, for his friendship, for his love, for taking so much responsibility here at the Bhakti Center. Also, he played a very leading role for a number of years here during a difficult period called the COVID years. And so he was really looking after things at that time. And I just want to express my deep gratitude and appreciation to him, and also for him inviting me to present today. He's like my senior. I see him in that although I'm older.
None of this was in our slides. We had to prepare.
I told him we're sticking strictly to the script, okay? But I just wanted to say all of this, and I have something I'd like to present to that.
It's the bride. Good thing I wore white today. Normally I take these off, but because it was offered so much love, I'm just gonna leave it for a little while.
Please do. It was yesterday. It was being worn by Krishna, and today it's being worn by Gauranga. So this is Gauranga. So big round of applause for that.
I didn't bring them for you. Sorry.
I'm glad.
Thank you so much, Nitai. I appreciate you a lot. And this sort of idea of just kind of speaking together came from one day. I live in Brooklyn, and he was visiting me. We were walking through Prospect Park, and regularly he, either individually or along with his wife, they do little what they call Bhagavatam bites, which is they just will record a few minutes of them reading a little bit from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Purana, and then just putting that online on YouTube. And we were just hanging out during the walk, and I had no idea this was coming. He was like, "Let's do a Bhagavatam bite." We just sat down on a bench. He's like, "I got my equipment." He pulled out his phone and his tripod. He had like a lapel mic, and he was like, "I got my iPad on here," and I was like, "This was premeditated." And I thought, how cool, like how wonderful a devotee association is, spiritual sangha is, that there was that this is what we bring out of each other, and so that's how we spent our time, and it was just so much fun. It was unscripted, unprompted, and we just were speaking. I was like, we should just do that sometime at Bhagavad Sravana, because I love hearing from Nitai. I love spending time with Nitai, and so this was just really just a selfish means for me to be able to just be a little close to him and do something together. And then we found out that this was also a special day where our Foundations of Bhakti crew is going to be here, and so this was the topic that we were given was, who are we doing Bhakti for, right? It's a good question, right? It's a Bhakti Center. Be good to know that. Is this first? Oh, I'm in the first line. Okay, so who are we doing Bhakti for? Got a simple answer. It's Krishna. Any questions? That's the presentation. Thank you so much. We can end early.
Thank you for the beautiful topic.
Thank you for the beautiful topic. I hope we answer your question. It's pretty simple.
And the gentleman in the picture is downstairs, actually. I think you might have seen him.
There's someone downstairs that does look like him.
So, we also wanted to pose a little bit further question, because one might ask, well, who are we doing Bhakti for? Of course, Krishna. But who is Krishna? And why do you worship him? Some people say, Hare Krishnas, and you worship Krishna. So we just wanted to address those questions.
The reason which Christians said he's God, and that's why. Any questions? And so part of this discussion also is that there's a beautiful story that comes to my mind that some of us know often, that sometimes when we come to spiritual life, there's this mood of surrender that we ultimately have to step into at some point, where we're trying to understand something that is beyond, in many ways, our ability to comprehend materially, and this idea of surrender. And sometimes we just kind of we think surrender just means to stop, to turn off our brain and to stop thinking. And Srila Prabhupada, who's the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, who translated the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavata to read from, there was a story where some of his followers were just kind of going along with something that didn't really make sense. And at the end of it, he was wondering, why did you do that? It's like, oh, we were just trying to be surrendered. And he said, you should never surrender your intelligence. You should never surrender your intelligence. And so, Radhanath Swami, my spiritual teachers, often refer to our intelligence as our God-given intelligence, right? To use our intelligence. And so sometimes we take our intelligence and it's our process of discrimination, our critical thinking faculty that got us to spiritual life in the first place. And then sometimes when we get to spiritual life, we just shut all that off, right? Without realizing that was our greatest asset that got us here in the first place, that helped us take the leap towards exploring a new path, a new way of life, a new way of thinking. And so we wanted to be able to explore this question openly and as I'm not a questions at the answers person, question at the end type of person. I don't know if you are. And so we didn't discuss that ahead of time. There's a few things we'll work out. But people do have questions or reflections. We want to invite that in along the way.
Yes, please.
So we also do have a lot of slides to get through, so we're going to try to move through them.
Okay, so we were going to start with the question of asking why worship? Because, of course, worship can have a negative connotation in modern society. Worship of anything or anyone. Why should we bow down to, offer homage to, offer praise to anything or anyone? And somehow as we were discussing this, because Yadanath was getting very excited, these are all of his worshipable beings up here on one slide. He thought, how did he do that? When he came in, I saw him wearing his KISS Army shirt, and then I realized, no, it is a Krishna Army shirt. So like that. So, as we were discussing the topic, what came to my mind is at the age of, 13 to maybe 18, my bedroom at home, I don't know if anyone else was like this as a teenager, my parents wouldn't let me hang anything on the walls except for there were 3 picture frames on one of the walls. And my friend, he had like a loft type of room, and from literally the ground to the ceiling was covered with rock band pictures, and I loved his room so much. I thought, I want to do the same. And my parents said, no, you can't hang up any pictures. So what I did was I connected a first picture to all of the frames, and then I taped pictures to the pictures, and I covered the entire wall without hanging anything exactly on the wall. But the wall was covered with pictures of mostly bands and, performers. Since then, I've seen people who have their walls covered with, beautiful actors or actresses, or if you go to India, in South India, Tamil Nadu especially, they have temples for football players or cricket players, So all kinds of people in the world are worshipped, actually.
Football is soccer for Jenny Time, by the
Sorry.
way.
Well, okay, I'm not going to open that. Football is football for everywhere else except for America.
This is America.
Sorry, America is soccer. Yeah. So, but yeah, people are worshipped all over the world, and I guess the essence is that it's kind of a tendency in us to worship, to idolize, to admire to want to look at someone else and want to be like them, or to want to develop those qualities, or even, we say, wish we were like them. And so we put them on a little bit of a pedestal, and we kind of worship them, we idolize them, we pay money to go to their concerts, to their games, to watch their television programs. We offer so many different things. So it's actually kind of an innate thing. I had a friend, after I moved in, became a monk in London. This friend of mine thought I was completely crazy. They were a self-professed atheist. And they said, okay, now I'm going to go and do my own adventure. So they bought a car, they moved to Greece. We were in London, they drove all the way to Greece. They hired a club, a pub, bar on the beachfront, and they started a nightclub. And so while they were there, I don't know anyone here from Greece? Really? Yasu.
Yes.
So, where in Greece? Mainland?
Well, I was born here, but my parents were from pretty much mainland.
Mainland, okay. So this person went to Crete.
Oh. And
So anyway, on Crete, there's one place called Vai Beach, which is the only place in Europe that has. But to get there, it's a very winding mountainside. So this person went up there, went to the other side, and was coming back, and the brakes on the car failed as they were coming down this winding road. And slowly but surely, they kept picking up speed to the point where actually the car had become out of control. And even though they were pressing on the brake, trying to stop, nothing was happening. And eventually came to the corner, and they just went boom, right over the edge. And my friend shared with me later that this point where the car went over the edge, they threw their hand up in the air off of the steering wheel and said, "My dear God, please help me." And this person was a self-professed atheist. Somehow there was some gripping on the edge of the land that stopped the car. It was like some sort of fencing in the soil that stopped the car, so the car didn't go over. And this person opened their eyes in complete panic and shock, and then got out of the car and was just like, But all they could keep thinking about is, I called out to God, and the car stopped. And why did I call out to God? So when they came back to London, they came and they asked me, why did I call out to God? I don't even believe in God. I don't even believe there is a God. And I just said, because it's the nature of all of us to know that God exists. And especially in times of trouble, these two hands somehow come together like this. And we just immediately start to think, my dear God, please help me. So this propensity for worship is actually kind of there in all of us.
And we wanted to also explore a little bit of the idea of when we think of this word worship, because it's sometimes, I always find language is very interesting in spiritual conversations. Like you can ask somebody a question, do you believe in God? And the person asking that question and the person answering the question can both have very different understandings of what that means. And so the word worship itself, when we think of like, why do you worship Christian? We wanted to explore that word a little bit, not just as the word of like idolize or like this kind of power dynamic, but more actually in the context of what the word bhakti generally means. There's this beautiful verse in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita where I think this word is used. This is in the 47th verse, the last verse of the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Somebody want to read the verse out loud? Can you see the verse? Can you hear the verse? Can you see that?
And of, and of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental, loving service to me, he is the most innately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion.
So the reason I wanted to share this verse is because the commentary by Srila Prabhupada is very interesting because he speaks on this word worship, where actually he dissects the actual Sanskrit meaning of the word. And what we're finding here in the Gita is this idea that there's a progression towards understanding what it means to offer yourself in love to somebody else. And he says the word bhajate, which is this word which is used in the word, is significant. Bhajate has its word in the root verb bhaj. I promise it's not a linguistic class, we're just getting through. Which is used when there's a need of service. The English word worship cannot be used in the same sense as bhaj. Worship means to adore, to show respect, and to honor the worthy one. But service with love and faith is especially meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus every living entity is intended to serve the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Person, by their own constitution. So when we get to this idea of like, who is bhakti for? Well, bhakti is for Krishna. Okay, well, who is Krishna? Why do you worship Krishna? We first wanted to just kind of give a little bit of context of this word worship itself and understand what it means when we practice bhakti and have a relationship with that person that's less in a mood of adoration and like just like this power dynamic and more entering into a space of love which is conveyed and expressed and experienced through service. And so this is the point rather than okay, worship may be innate, but actually somebody may be like, well, I don't worship anything. Like I hate rock bands and I'm not a fan of the Beatles and I'd never been to Greece before in my life. But really this idea is actually to love and be loved, right? Like a professed atheist needs to be like, I don't worship anything. And that's just like some weird thing that just came up like evolutionarily, like to give our lives meaning, whatever. But I don't think anybody can deny the innate need within all of us to love and be loved. And this strong tendency of every living entity. And therefore this word service comes up, right? When we look at the translation of the word bhakti, the word service is innately part of the definition itself. And I just wanted to read also, there was this, I don't have it here in the slide, but this is from a lecture that was given in New York in December 19, 1966. Srila Prabhupada again was describing this word worship and this word bhakti, distinguishing it from just bhakti, but actually meaning this idea of loving service. He said, we should worship. The word worship is not applicable to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The exact word is seva, bhajanti, this word. Seva means service. Here it is, bhajanti, this word, this service. Wherever you'll find the dealings between the Supreme Person and a devotee, the word is used, bhajanti. The word bhajanti, which is where we get the root word bhakti from, cannot be translated into worship. Worship means puja, the Sanskrit word puja. Just like a worthy gentleman comes, I give it all reception. There may not be love, that is only etiquette, but love is a different thing. So it is said here that bhajanti, this word bhakti, means render service in love. When there is question of love, there is service. Without service, we have got practical experience. Suppose if I love somebody and I don't give them something, don't eat something, or don't give them something palatable, then what love is this? That is not love. Love means render service. So this idea of bhakti being an expression of love through the soul, there naturally becomes, well, where does that love get directed? Right? It's less about, do I believe in God, but where is that receptacle, that object of love that I can give myself to in a way that satisfies my deepest yearning.
Everyone still with us? Yeah?
We're going to quiz you on all these words at the
That's
end.
right. So
Nobody gets their lunch without knowing what the word bhajanti means.
I see no one's taking notes. So, yes, desire for connection. So, all of these words, all these things we're discussing, worship and service and love, all of this really is just posing the question or driving the question, why? Why do we want to worship anything? Why do we want to love anything? Why do we want to serve? Because actually there's also an innate need for connection. We actually generally want to connect. Of course, Gauranga, who playing devil's advocate, may say, I'm a hermit, I don't want to connect with anyone, I don't want to be with anyone. I'd rather live in the mountains and not. And of course there are yogis who do this. But in general, there is something within us that just wants to connect with someone else or something else. Anyone has that experience? Yes, that they like to connect with like-minded people, or they want to connect, or people like to connect. There's a child in the room. Anyone ever notice when the child comes into the room, it just becomes the center of everything? Anyone who's a parent, you know that the child is like, it's just all the attention. So people like to connect. Here in New York, I notice, I think every second person has at least one dog. So people like
One, two. I'm the second person.
He's got the dog and I have the dog. So, yes, everyone has, because people are connecting. If you're, we like to spend time in the parks, and you see people with their dogs. People are just striving to connect with others, to try to connect with other people, or try to connect with something higher. I would imagine you've come here because there's a desire to connect with something higher than ourselves. We look outside for it, we look inside for it. We're looking for something that can connect us. And ultimately, this principle of bhakti is driven by this idea of connection. So this is a very beautiful picture, but I do realize that some may find it a little could find it awkward. Sometimes religious pictures can be overtly stimulating in not a positive way. But anyone knows where this picture is from? One person? Anyone? Where? Sistine Chapel. Anyone has been there and seen the picture? Oh, beautiful. Okay, so quite a few people, yes. So we also, this picture, I remember when I visited the Sistine Chapel many years ago, and I saw this picture. Somehow, you see the picture here, there, and it's often used in different ways. And really, in one sense, it's the connection of God with the jiva, with the supreme soul and the minute soul, God and the human beings, us. But when I saw this picture, what it reminded me of, interestingly enough, was an experience that I had when I was very young, living here in America. There is anyone knows, well then it was called WWF. Anyone knows what WWF? World Wrestling Federation, yeah, okay. So, of course, when I was a kid, we used to watch WWF, and I have a brother, he's about 3 years younger than me. And our father took us to a WWF match, right? I see some people going like, yeah, I remember that.
I still have a poster on my wall.
So we went to this event, and during the intermission, our father took us downstairs out of the bleachers into the area where you get drinks, popcorn, or whatever like that. And he had me in one hand and my brother in the other hand. And it was an interesting experience because it was so crowded and we were just little people. I was probably 8 or 9 at the most, and my brother would have been like 5, 6, something like that. And so we were each on a hand of my father, and we're walking through this massive crowd. So really all we could see was like kneecaps, people, But it was so crowded that I felt my father's hand kind of, be a little bit stronger or more firm. He really wanted to hold on to us. But then something happened. As we were moving through the crowd, I looked over and I could see my brother on the other hand, and I saw his hand slip away from my father's hand. And then I saw him disappear amongst the kneecaps. And he literally disappeared. What happened at that moment was that the grip that my father had on my hand, what do you think happened?
Lined up on the other side.
Say again?
Lined up on the other side.
lightened up on the other side because he lost the grip of my brother. But what did he do to my hand? He squeezed tighter. I could feel the intensity that was in him because he had lost grip with his son. And so immediately my father, like some superhero, started partying people out of the way and moving people to the side, kind of pulling me along with him. And then eventually, what it seemed like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but it was probably like 30 seconds or a minute, he finally moved a few people, and there my brother was kind of sitting against the wall. What do you think he was doing? Crying like anything. He was so scared. He was so alone. And then he was sitting down, and my father reached down to him, and he reached up to my father. And it was like this type of thing. It was a reaching out. And as soon as his hand fell into my father's hand, I saw that his tears stopped, and the grip on my hand that my father had immediately released. And everyone felt this kind of relief. And then he pulled my brother to him and he gave him a big hug. And it was like, yes, my brother is back in that shelter. And so somehow this picture for me really, really offers this idea of connectedness, that when we reconnect, when we make a significant connection, we feel sheltered, we feel safe, we feel at home, we feel loved, we feel connected. So like this principle of connection. And this is the driving force really of bhakti. Because the word yoga, it actually means
To connect.
union, to connect. Like a yoke, you connect a horse or to the cart with a yoke. So yoga means to connect. And Srila Prabhupada says in one place that the actual translation of the word yoga is plus. He says the actual translation of the word yoga is plus. At the present moment, we are minus God, or minus the Supreme. But when we make ourselves plus connected, then our human form of life is perfect. So this idea is that bhakti is this beautiful, beautiful reconnecting of ourselves as a spirit soul with Krishna, the Supreme Soul. And it's such a natural thing that when this connection is made, finally, I'm safe. Finally, I'm at home. Finally, there's shelter. And we feel complete. We don't necessarily feel lost or alone, or the yearnings, the lamenting, the hankerings, so like that. So this is bhakti. And bhakti offers us an understanding of many different types of relationships also with the Supreme. It's not just, of course I grew up in a Christian background, but the idea of connecting with God was an old man, and that was kind of all I understood really of God. And then later got into different types of meditation where there was an understanding that God is an energy. And I thought that's pretty good, because I'd really rather not hang out with an old man. An energy might be better than an old man, because when you're young, you know. So, but this idea of varieties of relationships, we can see even in our own lives that we have many relationships. We're not just one person seen the same way by all people. You might be a mother. If you're a mother, that means you're also probably a daughter. You may be a sister. You might be a friend to someone else. You might be the boss at work, or you might be an employee. You might just be a passenger on the bus or the subway on the way to work. And in so many different ways, we have so many different types of relationships.
And we wanted to look at this idea of, in one sense, bhakti is sometimes translated as the soul's relationship with God, right? Expressed through loving devotional service. And then at what point do we understand that God to be as a person whom we can interact in relationship with, right? And what does that mean? And that's when we start to kind of make our way towards who is Krishna. And a lot of times when we think of the word God, we think of God in terms of how God relates to this world. God the provider, God the sustainer, God the creator, etc. We see God in terms of what he does for me in this life, in this world, right here, right now. And there's this beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna mentions how all beings rest within me, and at the same time, I do not rest in them. Which is this almost kind of contradictory. But this idea that, like, yes, I'm the source of everything, but I also exist beyond creation. And so when you enter into bhakti, you begin to understand this idea of God beyond just the creator of this world. And so you start to begin to see God as a person who exists in his own home, in his own playground, in his own abode, which we call the spiritual world. So we have this idea of God existing. So who is God when he's not just busy taking care of the material world? Like God is checklist and checking in, like some like big transcendental Santa Claus, like who's been naughty, who's been nice, or like is everything running okay, the water works, and making sure that the planets are all floating and everything's happening, and the first day, the second day, the sixth day, the seventh day, it's just like, whew, and pooped, I got to rest for a minute. And so there's this idea of, I love this quote from C.S. Lewis where he makes that, if I find myself desiring something which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world. Right? And so bhakti implicitly implies something beyond this world, and this idea of Krishna being God who exists beyond this world. And so that's when we get to this idea of Krishna. We wanted to just spend the last bit of time that we have today, and then we'll open up for some questions about Krishna, which literally means the all-attractive. There are innumerable names which have various meanings to describe God, not just as the creator or the sustainer or the provider, but God the beautiful, God the lover, God the friend, God the artist. And so this is the idea when we get to understand Krishna. I think there's one more. Yeah. So this program which we have on Sundays, the Bhagavata Sravana, which literally means to hear from the Bhagavatam, which is an anthology. It's a Bhagavad Purana. It's a Vedic scripture that is an anthology of stories about. Srimad Bhagavatam literally means, can be translated to God the Beautiful. And it's a story of God interacting in a mood of bhakti with his devotees, with his loving associates, and people developing that mood of devotion, right? And so when we talk about Krishna, when we talk about who we're doing bhakti for, bhakti is not just love or devotion, but that love and devotion which is expressed through action towards who? Towards the supreme person who is the ultimate source of loving relationships with all living people. And when you move beyond God is the old man sitting in the sky, or God's the creator, or God's the sustainer, but God who is that person who is waiting to reciprocate with every living being's yearning for love and connection, that is Krishna. And so therefore you find pictures, or all over the place, we're going to have a picture of Krishna as someone beautiful, as someone smiling, as someone engaging in various different relationships of bhakti.
And there's a beautiful verse from the 10th volume, you could say, of this book, the Bhagavata. And it's a very interesting, it's an interesting time as Krishna enters into a specific arena, a wrestling arena. Yes, God wrestles. As he enters into the wrestling arena, then it's described how everyone there was seeing him. And it's amazing, it always blows me away how so many different people can see things differently. You know, I remember many years ago someone sharing about, I think he used just a phone, and you won't see it on this one, but anyway, they held up a phone and they said, they held the phone towards them with the Apple logo on it. And they said, do you see the apple? And I said, no. And they said, well, there's one there. And I said, but I don't see it. And they said, but it's there. And I said, no, it's not. And they said, yes, it is. And I said, no, it's not. And they said, yes, it is. And it just became, and you realize this is the way wars start. The people are just looking at the same thing from a different angle of vision and a different perspective. And they're not able to reconcile the fact that they're looking at the same thing. They just have a different perspective on it. So this beautiful thing says that various groups of people in the arena regarded Krishna in different ways when he entered it with his elder brother. And yes, even that is quite amazing that God has an older brother. God has parents. All of these things for me, the first time I was introduced to Krishna was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. God is the oldest. Yeah, but he's got a mom. How does that work? You know, then she must be God. But then the more that you dive into the understandings of the supreme or the divine, you understand that the things that we may think are limiting are not limiting for him. So this way. The wrestlers in the arena saw Krishna as a lightning bolt, the men of Mathura as the best of males, the women as Cupid in person, the cowherd men as their relative, the impious rulers as a chastiser, his parents as their child, the king of the Bhojas as death, the unintelligent, thank you, as the Supreme Lord's universal form, the yogis as the absolute truth, and the Vrishnis as their supreme worshipable deity. So the point being here that there were so many people in that arena, and these are just a few that when they saw him, they thought and experienced him differently. So this was, again, one of the things for myself personally when I was first introduced to Krishna. I was very reluctant. First, I thought the Hare Krishna people were extremely weird. And I used to have long hair, lots of nose rings and earrings and everything. And I saw them, I said, okay, they're bald, and wrong answer, and they're wearing bed sheets and playing tambourines, dancing down the street. Yeah, I'm glad they're so happy. Good for them, but nothing to do with me. But then the more that I kind of began to understand the beauty of Krishna, then the more that you can kind of see how wonderful and how amazing it is, this relationship, that there's so much diversity. And this diversity is accepted in a way that it also creates unity. So this idea of unity and diversity, there can be so many different ways of seeing the Lord. And in one space, Srila Prabhupada was speaking in a talk, and he said that first-class religion is any religion that brings a person to a loving relationship with God. So any religion that brings us to a loving relationship with God, that's first class. And at that point I realized that this philosophy of Krishna consciousness is not something sectarian. It's not something that it's this way or that way. It's a space where we understand that God can be perceived and known and understood in so many different ways. So like that.
So what we want to do is just share and end with this picture. This picture is hanging up over there, actually. There it is. It's over there. Is that when we look at what God is hungry for, in terms of what's the one thing that God can't force out of anyone, it's the love that's in the heart of every living being. Right? And love is the thing that you can force someone to serve you, You can force somebody to do what you tell them to do. You can force someone into anything except to genuinely love you. That's the only thing that we always hold the eternal ownership of in our heart. And so when we come to the place of wanting to give our love, so to speak, when God or Krishna receives that love, it can be received in unlimited ways, just like the way that we have relationships in our life. And in some ways, we might say that's anthropomorphic, where we're posing our experience of life onto God, and we would say it's the other way around. That we exist in that way because it has its original eternal foundation in spiritual reality. And so why wouldn't, right? We have a desire to experience what it's like to be a parent, what it's like to be a friend, what it's like to have an intimate partner, what it's like to have a brother or a sister, or what it's like to be a child. And so God wouldn't limit himself to be able to experience all of those things as well. And so we have this beautiful picture here that Nitai was thinking of that we thought demonstrates in so many beautiful ways, right? It's almost when you think of, if you were to look at this picture and say God is in this picture, you would say, who's God? Probably, I'm not going to go, but most people will probably think it's that guy standing there in green, right? Right? He's the guy, he's the person, he's kind of like standing up there looking after everybody, etc., right? We would say no. Krishna is the young little boy running towards his mother. Because you might say, who's the happiest in this picture?
It might be hard to say.
We're getting
I
into...
think the cow is the happiest, I think.
Or the mother.
Or the mother, right? We don't know, right?
Well,
The little girl with the
they
tray.
look pretty happy.
Yeah.
The bird at the top is doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Right? And so when we look at Krishna, we're looking at God who's able to, is that personality of God that manifests in a way to receive and experience love in every variety of relationship.
Beautiful. So, yeah, somehow we were thinking, oh yeah, we're on this whole talking about, oh yeah, we have to answer this question, who are we doing bhakti for? And then I just thought, this picture is so beautiful, and I was sharing with Dayal that, because we're God brothers, so our spiritual master was present when this picture was being painted by the artist. And he said it was on a wall that's like huge, probably, I think he said even bigger than that whole wall over there, like higher and wider. And he said they used to, the artist used to call him in and say, what do you think this should be? How do you think it's like this? How do you think it is like that in the spiritual world? And they would discuss and look at the picture and unfold it. And for me, this picture has always been a beautiful window. Srila Prabhupada explained that the pictures, they're the windows into the spiritual world. We can see into the spiritual world in these pictures, and the more that our heart becomes connected through bhakti, the more that when we see a picture, sometimes we might even shed a tear. Sometimes we might giggle. We might grin, or we might kind of chuckle. Like there's a picture at the back there of Krishna surrounded by many Vishnu forms. And the essence of that picture, if you don't know what it is, you won't get it. But when you look at that, you know, whenever I see that picture, I just think, oh, Lord Brahma. It's a tough one for Lord Brahma. But you don't know that unless you see all these pictures are windows into the spiritual world. And we understand that Krishna has so many different activities and so many different persons that love him and repose their affection and love through him. And in this picture we have all of the primary relationships that we know and experience in this world ourselves being depicted with Krishna. So we have Krishna here, as we were saying, and then we have like a kind of servitor or sort of rasa here, relationship with the cows, because Krishna is He's actually just a cowherd boy, which is the simplest, strangest thing. Again, when I first heard, like, God is a cowherd boy, I thought, wow, who made this stuff up? That's pretty good. But actually, it's like the more you dive into it, it all just makes such perfect sense. And then you have this relationship with his mother and his father. And you can see the love that his mother has, just some beautiful pictures here. That Krishna as a baby, we were talking earlier about this principle of Krishna as a baby and how when a child is in the room, there's a child in the room now, and the attention is going to the child. So like that, when Krishna is in the room, all eyes are on the child. And a mother's love is described that a mother's love is the most selfless thing that we can experience in the material world, that is as close as you can get to the love that is given in the spiritual world. That selfless love that a mother has for the child. It's very hard to fathom. So that love is there. Then you have these guys here who look like they're ready to get up to some mischief. So these are Krishna's friends, his cowherd boyfriends. And then you have like the parrots and the trees, the peacock, the flowers. They're all, they have their own relationship. It's kind of like a Disney movie where everything is animate. And the flowers are like, Hare Krishna. Everyone's singing, everyone's dancing. It's all happy and joyous. And then back here we have these three young ladies who are like, oh my goodness, look at that Krishna, here he comes. And this is Krishna's, I guess you could say, beloved. She's thinking of Krishna like, wow, he's so handsome, look at him, he's such a cool guy. And of course, he's also thinking similarly. So all of those relationships are there just in this one picture. So, anything else you would like to add on that?
Well, we wanted to give some time to open up for just questions as well as just reflections and discussions. And so I think the last thing that we'll conclude with is when we look at this picture, look at other pictures, I think there is a sense where we find this also in the Gita, the idea of that there's only so much, like there's bhakti is a call for our heart to embrace what the mind is incapable of understanding. And when
Can you say that again?
Bhakti is a call for our heart to embrace what the mind is incapable of understanding. And when we have a certain philosophical approach to religion and spirituality, there's so much argumentation and logical discussion, philosophical debate, etc. But at the end of the day, when we recognize that the greatest yearning of the soul, of every living being, is for connection, and that connection is the greatest connection, most intimate connection, is a connection of love. And that love ultimately connects beyond just mostly the things that we love in this world are things that relate to things that are similar to my bodily identification or different than my bodily identification. It's like a very conditional love based off of a particular physical identity. And when we're able to extend beyond that to spiritual love, it's a love of the soul. And that soul has its ultimate zenith or connection in expressing itself in loving a relationship with God. And God, who is able to manifest himself and express himself in an unlimited varieties of ways to reciprocate with the unique flavor of love of every living being, that God is called Krishna.
Could you say that again?
That God is called Krishna. And then when we look at Krishna, we begin to see God as the artist, the flute player, the dancer, the beautiful boy with a garland of flowers around his neck, has friends, has parents, has siblings, has various engagements of love. And it's less of a philosophical conclusion and more of just simply an invitation to experience something divine and sweet through bhakti. So that's sort of kind of how we wanted to package this presentation for all of you today. We want to be able to ask if there's questions or even just reflections or thoughts that came to mind. We wanted to be able to.
Yeah, anything
Open
that
up
would
there.
like to share, except for him. Oh, sorry.
Thanks for a wonderful presentation. I just think it's really cool, kind of Bhakti just pointed out to me, that this final painting here by Kirti is a complete flip of the Michelangelo painting that he showed at the beginning. the roles are reversed, which underscores your point. So that was intentional. That's a great catch by my.
Yeah, we got to do that. That was his idea. Nice. Very good. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Reflections? Yes, in the back.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Nice class. Thank you for going through all of the different aspects and essential things for bhakti. I have a question for someone. Let's say someone grew up knowing different idea of religion and seeing some of the negative connotations of that, like maybe some riots or something. How do we actually understand, like, how to clear their doubts about certain religion and actually what consistently they can do to actually get them above that blind doubt that they have and to have their faith settled in back because they have gone through certain doubts over the period because of the situations that they were facing.
Somebody doing something in the name of religion that kind of creates doubt in the whole thing itself.
Yes, so I know it cannot be done in a day maybe, but something that they can do consistently to remove that blind doubt and establish faith again in their heart.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been thinking of this a lot because I heard it from a pastor once, this idea of, there's 10 commandments in the Bible, and one of them is thou shalt not use the Lord's name in vain, or God's name in vain. And we normally think of that like, don't curse and say God's name, like, gosh dang it, or, we kind of think of it in that way. But the way that the principle is actually translated, I thought, is the original meaning of the command, which I thought was really beautiful, is that we should never use God's name wrongly, like for our own vanity purposes. Like something in the name of God that's not really in the name of God, but it's actually more in the name of ego, right? And I think that that's where the misuse of religion puts people in a really bad situation. It's like, I'm doing something in the name of God or religion, and it's actually just me finding a vehicle to express my personal views, or my anger, or my discrimination, or racism, or hatred, or whatever it may be, right? And we kind of find that in really every, like, when you have a doctor that has malpractice, you don't think, I'm never going to a doctor again, right? Or you get a bad haircut, you're like, I'm never getting my haircut again. Why is your hair so long? I had a bad haircut 13 years ago, I never got a haircut again. Like, we have this ability, I think, in material spheres and occupations to separate the malpractice of an individual from the thing itself. When it comes to spirituality, it becomes really difficult for us to do that. And that might be because it's so vulnerable, or for a variety of reasons. But I think that what we can do is find people that do actually represent something in a way that's authentic and uplifting. And they're out there, and I'm always a believer that we find what we're looking for. So even in a person, right? If I want to find the bad qualities in someone, they're there, right? If you want to find them in me, don't have to go far. They're very apparent. Like, just let's go have lunch tomorrow. You'll find them. Like, the bad qualities are there, so to speak. If you're looking for the good qualities in somebody, you will find them. You will find them, right? I'm a genuine believer that we find what we're looking for in people, in life, and in religion and spirituality. And so some of it is being able to know where to look, and some of it is also like, I'm sometimes looking for a reason not to believe. I'm looking for an excuse to, like, you're trying to catch somebody doing something wrong, right? It's like they say you can never wake up someone who's pretending to be asleep. Like, it's impossible to wake someone who's pretending to be asleep. And so I find that if we're looking for reasons to believe in something that is genuine, we'll find it. But a lot of it has to just be my own internal process. So those are just, may not be specific answers, especially not knowing the specifics of the situation, if you're asking a general question or specific, but those are just my own thoughts and responses. Say something, or Champa wanted to say something.
Thank Thank you so much for such a wonderful answer, Dayal. And the reflection that I wanted to share is that story that you shared of your dad holding on to both you and your brother and then losing your brother was so powerful. I feel like that story sums up the essence of bhakti. I think it also answers the question as well, because bhakti is okay when we have lost the grip of our Father, we have lost the grip of God, Krishna. We are just crying. We are just sobbing. We are just feeling what we discussed yesterday, this God-sized hole in our heart that Richard Rohr talks about. And even if we try to fill it with so many material things, even if they bring some temporary satisfaction of the senses, you know, like if someone would have given your brother, like, here's some cotton candy, he would have still been sobbing. That cotton candy wouldn't have fixed it. The only thing that would have fixed that is being in connection with your Father again. And then when he's in connection with your Father, it's the joy of the soul, the joy of bhakti. Then everything is okay. And then also, if once he is holding his Father's hand, someone gives him some cotton candy, he would also probably enjoy the cotton candy too. But his deepest happiness, it's not like he's going to reject the cotton candy, but his deepest happiness is in that connection with his Father. And I think that also, you know, answers what you were just answering so beautifully, Dayal. It's like, if someone is saying they're connected to their Father and then making other people cry, they're not actually connected to the Father. Because when you're actually connected to the Father, God, Divinity, Krishna, and you're happy, then all you want to do is take other people's hand and connect them so that they're happy. So I think we can recognize if someone is making other people suffer or cry, okay, that's not the place where I'm going to get connected with that person. Doesn't mean that practice or that institution, but looking for people who are connected, that sangha, right? Then that is also how we can get connected.
So beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, somehow what came to mind is both of you were speaking was just this principle. We also have to be the change we want to see in the world. So if we found that space, then we have to emanate and buy that space and try to give it and share it with others. Otherwise, we all do have our own journey, and there are many things going on in this world that we don't really have so much control over, as far as to answer your question. But we can at least have some control over ourselves and getting connected ourselves and finding that space and trying to share it with others. So the conch is probably going to blow relatively soon, and we have one more slide. I mean, it usually goes around 12:30, but there was one more slide we wanted to share, just because this week is a special week, and coming up to Wednesday is a special day because we're talking about Krishna. I just wanted to share that there's a name for Krishna which is Madan Mohan. Madan Mohan. And Madan Mohan means one that is so beautiful that he charms Cupid. And Cupid is usually the person charming, you know, if Cupid fires a little arrow, it's like, woo! He's going, Cupid. But thousands of Cupids can come before Krishna and they all become charmed. They all become charmed by him because he's so beautiful. But there is an associate of Krishna named Radharani, Srimati Radharani, and this is her there in the picture. And she has a name, and her name is Madan Mohan Mohini. So, Madan Mohan means one who charms or bewilders Cupid. But Madan Mohan Mohini means one who is the bewilderer of the bewilderer of Cupid. One who charms the charmer of Cupid. So Krishna, he is charmed by Srimati Radharani. So their loving relationship, and there's a quote here that Dayal can read.
This quote that was, it has some Sanskrit origin. We don't know where it's from. It was found in a journal of Vaishnava studies that Satyaraj published a couple decades ago in 2001. But we're not sure the source, but it's a beautiful, beautiful verse. It says, "O philosophers, can you understand it? Do you have any idea what it means? Sri Krishna, who is the supreme controller and the master of all universes, who is the killer of the most treacherous demons and who is the teacher of Brahma, the original created being, what does it mean that even he was defeated by the glance of a teenage girl?" And so all of that idea of like God, the great, becomes completely flipped on its head when we come to bhakti. And it just becomes how our loving relationships exchanged. Right? And God becomes conquered by the love of one whose heart is filled with bhakti. And so Radharani is described as that epitome, that person who holds the highest degree of love. And so next week is Radhashtami, which is we celebrate Radharani, and so we wanted to end on that.
So I invite you all to please be present on the stage, and I'd like to thank Gauranga for
Thank you.
this wonderful opportunity.
So now we will have what's called art tea. So the curtains are going to open, and Vasudeva the priest is going to offer the different elements, articles of the earth back to Krishna in gratitude, welcoming Krishna into our lives and into our hearts. So we're going to do kirtan during this sacred ceremony and chant and dance together. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Paramahamsa Paravajikacharya Ashtotra Shota Shri Shamadi Divine Grace Nisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Pa Paramahamsa Paravajikacharya Ashtotra Shota Shri Shamadi Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantapati Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Kaliyuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Yagi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande All glories to some devotees All glories to some devotees All glories to some devotees All glories to the divine Ki Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga
coming to Bhagavata Sravana. And big Haribol and gratitude to Nitai Prabhu and Dayal Gauranga Prabhu. Haribol! And please, this happens every single Sunday. Please come back. Next week we have Yogeshwara Das, who was a student, a disciple of Prabhupada, actually. I remember he spoke with you about psychology. Yeah. So he will be speaking next Sunday, and Yadunath, wherever he is, I think he's in the back, will be hosting. So thank you all so much for coming. Also, please come on Wednesday if you can for Radhastami, the appearance day of Radha, the feminine aspect of God. And that will be on Wednesday. Is that 6 or 6:30 p.m. Positive? It's on the website. So if you go on the website and click on temple, it will be there and will give you the info. Also, I really want to give a big shout out to Baba Bhakti Devi and Nitai Prabhu, because they have recently really leveled up our newsletter, our temple newsletter, and made it so beautiful and so inspiring, highlighting different community members and people who make a big difference in our community. So if you haven't already signed up for that amazing newsletter, please do so by going to our website and scrolling down to the bottom and clicking. We have 2 newsletters, our regular newsletter and our temple newsletter. Why not join both? Then you can see everything that's happening here at Bhakti Center. And we have an amazing lunch feast for everyone in the back of the temple room. So please take in the back and stay and have Sangha, associate with each other. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
I don't know. I really don't know how it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's yeah, not like super rare. Yeah, she's definitely like yeah, primarily speaking right now. I have, I'm like, right? I have vocabulary, but also like more like the vocabulary side, because you can grow up here, but yeah,
That's
we'll talk with that, like Tagalog, and there's some devotees in our New Jersey temple. Yeah, we're kind of figuring that out. We don't really know. It's a big mystery. Yes. Yeah, we went to Janmashtami at the Central New Jersey Temple, and there was some like signs where they're saying
Oh, really? Wow.
I don't know, how far off it's going to be, but
2042.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I think for sure, we've always thought about trying to build kid from let's say Brooklyn and then you just get to
Yeah.
and so you build in Queens, but I live in Brooklyn, I think make a place to start.
Yeah, it's easy in New York for kind of the borough-itis to happen. Yeah, good. Yeah, that's good. But yeah, it's but it is a mystery in terms of we're thinking, he's only another 24/7 ways.
Yeah.
So homeschool thing is kind of
That's
natural in a way.
Making a couple bracelets from the
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as much as we think that Jesus is about actually a much longer than even I just also use good castles and that all together is but if it falls and we keep doing it will be much faster. This is turned off.